Hi, I'm Michael Denner here. I have been the director of the honors program since 2005, and I'm recording this in April of 2020. Um, I wanted to read a little bit about the history of the honors program from something that John Haig wrote back in, I guess, 1996 or 1997 on the 40th anniversary of the honors program. In the spring of 1956, Dean William Hugh McInerney decided that Stetson ought to have an honors program. After consulting with several faculty members, he announced the formation of a program, which in the first year would be available only to rising seniors. In the fall of 1956, Mary Ann Coslow, Rod Douglas, Sid Knight, John Morgan, and John Reiser became the charter members of the University Honors Program. Still reading here from John Haig's History of the Honors Program. The students were, upon entering the honors program, forgiven whatever requirements were at that time unmet, whether general or departmental. Each student proposed a senior project and asked 3 or 4 faculty members to supervise it. During the year, the students wrote a number of short papers related to the major project and discussed each with the members of the committee. So that's it. That's the history of the honors program, honors oral examination, or at least, the official record. I actually asked John for his records, and he gave me a box, and I found in that box the first grade register for those honors oral examinations, and written next to the names of all 5 students were the letters N-H. I think it's safe to assume from that evidence that the first 5 honors oral examinations were all failures, and these students did not pass their first honors oral examination. And yet we have that photograph from earlier on of the 5 members of the first honors class, and they're clearly graduating. So what happened? So apparently all 5 of them nonetheless managed to graduate from Stetson University, although they failed the exam that was supposed to be the culmination of their entire senior year. I actually reached out to all of these 5 members back in 2007 when we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the honors program, and I found out what had become of them. So I might have some of the details wrong. I'm working off of my memory of the time. I know that Rod Douglas became the dean of the School of Deacons in San Francisco. I know that Mary Ann Coslow retired from George Washington as a political scientist. She was a professor emerita and a very well-known political scientist. I'm less sure. I don't really recall what happened to Knight and Reiser. One of them became a medical doctor, and the other became, for his sins, a lawyer. I think it's fair to say that 1957 wasn't a particularly liberal time, and yet what you found at Stetson University was this kind of experiment in education that would be flat out impossible nowadays. A bunch of students were forgiven requirements, and they were actually expected to read, educate themselves, develop their own imagination. I mean, think about it. 1957, Elvis Presley was at his sort of apex back then in 1957. Jim Crow laws were in effect all over the United States, and there was no air conditioning in Florida, no Disney. So it was a very different world, and yet somehow, miraculously, I think, they had a vision. I'll finish this up with a quick read of a letter that Rod Douglas sent me back in 2007. The general education program of the late 1950s provided breadth, the challenge of new ideas, and the capacity to connect, analyze, and understand. I knew that from the get-go, the world was more than just a major. The honors program gave me a foundational experience of the excitement and adventure of learning, of education as learner-driven. So even though we can't possibly compete with The Rock or the larger-than-life John B. Stetson statue or the disco fountain, we've been doing these honors oral examinations for about 60-some years now, and you're about to take part in a cherished tradition, and good luck.